Why do we insist on letting others decide what we install on our consoles? Your hard drive is probably packed with mediocre titles, while true masters of fun and innovation are being unjustly forgotten, wrongly labeled as flops. I'm talking about 20 games that the industry and sales tried to bury, but which are essential experiences that deliver more quality than 90% of annual releases. If you ignore this list, you'll miss the chance to play something that truly deserves your time and pulls you out of the humdrum. It's time to stop being led by the hype and finally discover the excellence the majority wasn't brave enough to play. What was really going through Sony's mind when they allowed a game like Gravity Rush 2 to sink into oblivion? I am genuinely indignant at the lack of attention this masterpiece received. The gravitational control system here is utterly unique and absolutely addictive. It's as if Cat is an air surfer, inverting the ground and the sky for locomotion. The game rewards experimentation, and the sheer pleasure of simply falling upwards is worth the price of admission alone. The open world does suffer from a scale issue. The map is undeniably huge, and the floating city of Durga Paralau is gorgeous, but the navigation was a mess, with confusing icons and markers that forced you to waste time. Furthermore, the story, despite being the epic conclusion to the trilogy, is told in a rather verbose manner, crammed with dialogue that could have been trimmed to improve the pace and sense of urgency. Even with the interface issues and map clutter, the adventure is redeemed by the main character's charm and the exhilarating battles against the Navy. It is an explosion of color and creativity that steers clear of the standard gray palette of so-called serious games. If you want a sensation of flight and aerial combat that no Spider-Man or Infamous can deliver, find this disc now and experience true creative freedom. Let's talk about a game that was completely assassinated by the Hours of Content Brigade. The Order 1886 is a cinematic triumph that was judged unfairly on its runtime, not its quality. Ready at Dawn crafted a gorgeous, steampunk Victorian London where knights hunt werewolves, delivering an atmosphere so thick you could cut it with a knife. This game still looks better than most current-gen titles, making every single frame feel like a high-budget, beautifully lit oil painting. The combat is tight, focused, and features some ridiculously cool weapons, like the thermite rifle that first melts the enemy and then sets them ablaze. Was it short? Yes, but every minute was deliberate, focused, and delivered with a polish that few open-world games can touch. The complaint wasn't that the content was bad, it was that there wasn't enough of it, which speaks volumes about the incredible quality they did deliver. This game is the perfect counter-argument to the 100-hour open-world behemoths that pad their runtime with filler. The Order gives you a phenomenal, focused, and beautiful ride that respects your time. It's the definition of a cult classic that deserves a second chance, especially now that it can be picked up for the price of a fancy coffee. If you value visual fidelity and tightly scripted action over endless map markers, this is a must-play. Here is the game that proved Insomniac could deliver high-speed, chaotic fun long before Spider-Man swung onto the scene, yet Sunset Overdrive barely made a commercial dent. It's a game that asks, what if the city was your skate park, and the apocalypse was a massive rave? The movement system, where you grind, vault, and wall run while blasting hordes of mutants, is a sheer rush, forcing you to constantly move to stay alive and power up your abilities. Its biggest flaw, arguably, was its sheer, unbridled attitude. The game's relentless breaking of the fourth wall and in-your-face punk rock aesthetic might have been too much for the mainstream. But for those of us who appreciate clever, self-aware humor, the script is laugh-out-loud funny, providing a much-needed break from the grim seriousness of its console contemporaries. The arsenal of weapons is utterly insane, ranging from vinyl record launchers to explosive teddy bears. Sunset Overdrive is a perfect storm of creativity, dazzling visuals, an unparalleled movement system, and a commitment to pure, unadulterated fun. It's the colorful antidote to every serious gray and brown shooter you've ever played. If you want a game that feels like a caffeinated energy drink in video game form, you owe it to yourself to experience this underrated, chaotic masterpiece that the public foolishly overlooked. The commercial failure of Titanfall 2 remains one of the great marketing blunders in modern gaming history, a crime committed by its publisher, who carelessly placed its release between two massive shooters. The fact is, this game delivered one of the most innovative and perfectly paced first-person campaigns ever created, and its multiplayer is still arguably the best FPS experience available. The core gameplay, seamlessly transitioning from fluid, parkour-based wall running as a pilot to commanding a massive, powerful Titan, is a stroke of mechanical genius. The single-player campaign, however, is the true marvel. It continuously introduces revolutionary level mechanics that other games would dedicate their entire existence to, like the brilliant time travel device in Effect and Cause. The emotional bond between pilot Jack Cooper and the Titan BT-7274 gives the whole experience a genuine beating heart. While the multiplayer community might be smaller than its behemoth competitors, it remains tight, fast, and intensely satisfying. The balance between man and machine is impeccable, creating a dynamic unlike any other shooter. Titanfall 2 is the definition of a game that was creatively perfect but commercially unlucky. If you want a campaign that showcases true creative brilliance and a multiplayer that demands constant mastery, this is the gold standard. Dishonored 2 is an utter masterpiece of the immersive sim genre that was sadly lost in the holiday rush, proving that sometimes the best games are the ones that get least attention. Arcane didn't just iterate on the first game, they blew it wide open, giving you two distinct characters, Corvo and Emily, whose unique power sets allow for an unprecedented level of creative freedom. Every problem has 10 solutions, and every solution feels rewarding. The real innovation and the absolute genius that makes this game essential lies in its level design. Forget sprawling, empty open worlds. Here we have densely packed, intricate sandboxes that feel alive. The Clockwork Mansion, which reconfigures its rooms with the pull of a lever, or the Dust District, which is a maze of shifting sandstorms, are architectural marvels that elevate the entire medium. It's a stealth game, an action game, and a puzzle game all wrapped into one. The only flop here was the sales numbers. The game itself is a perfect machine of interconnected systems. It demands and rewards replayability, allowing you to go lethal, non-lethal, or mix and match across 2 full campaigns. If you value depth, world building, and games that let you truly define your own playstyle without holding your hand, Dishonored 2 is a beautiful, dark, and essential experience that deserves your immediate attention. Let's discuss Prey 2017, the definition of an intelligent, immersive sim that the masses tragically ignored. This game plunges you into the desolate, gorgeous confines of the Talos I space station, immediately establishing an atmosphere of tension and paranoia. The genius here is the Mimic, an enemy that can literally transform into any object in the environment. That innocent-looking coffee cup, that slightly misplaced wrench, they might be shape-shifting monsters, forcing you to treat every object with suspicion. It's a stroke of genius that keeps you constantly on edge. The sheer value and replayability come from the incredibly robust systems. You can literally talk yourself out of a confrontation, use engineering skills to repair routes, or go full cosmic horror and inject yourself with alien neuromods to gain frightening Typhon abilities. This massive freedom of choice makes Prey a perfect example of non-linear design, where the environment is the puzzle and your chosen skills are the tools. It's complex, dense, and rewards players who think outside the box. The main criticism, perhaps, was that it was too complex and too atmospheric for the average player craving simple action. But for those of us who yearn for that System Shock or classic BioShock feeling, the isolation, the mystery, and the interconnected world, Prey is a flawless experience. It's a cerebral, expertly crafted sci-fi thriller that demands a dedicated second look. It's a flop in sales, but a triumph in design. Immortals of Aveum arrived promising a AAA, military-style FPS experience, but with magic instead of bullets, and then completely failed to find an audience. This game is an unapologetic, high-octane action spectacle. The commitment to turning spellcasting into the foundation of rapid-fire combat is why it's perfect. You're constantly juggling 3 colors of magic, each acting like a different gun class: blue for precision, red for shotguns, and green for rapid-fire tracking. The flaw that might have scared people off was its lack of a distinct identity outside of its core mechanic. The hero, Jack, and the overarching plot felt like standard fantasy fare. But who cares about the narrative when the moment-to-moment action is this explosive? The developers understood that fast movement, aggressive flanking, and constantly cycling through abilities were the keys to satisfying combat. The boss fights in particular are gigantic, cinematic, and demanding duels that push the magical system to its limits. This is a game that showcases true next-gen spectacle, delivering visual effects and particle chaos that simply wouldn't work on older hardware. It's a perfect, bombastic game for the player who wants to feel overwhelmingly powerful without dealing with the usual tropes of cover shooters. It's an underserved, magical power fantasy that deserves credit for committing fully to its unique combat vision. Tango Gameworks, the studio famous for The Evil Within, delivered a stunningly atmospheric and visually arresting open-world Tokyo in Ghostwire, but sales remain stubbornly soft. This game is an absolute must-play for its atmosphere alone, a gorgeous, rain-soaked, abandoned Tokyo where neon signs reflect on empty streets, and you fight spirits using beautifully animated hand gestures to weave elemental attacks. What makes it perfect is that it's essentially an atmospheric detective story wrapped in an action RPG. You're not just clearing icons, you're unraveling the mystery of the city's sudden emptiness and saving lost spirits. The combat, or ethereal weaving, is unique and satisfying, forcing you to constantly switch between wind, water, and fire abilities to stun and core extract enemies. It's incredibly stylish and different from anything else on the market. Its main commercial stumble was likely due to its pacing. The open-world structure can feel slightly repetitive with its reliance on Torii Gate cleansing, and the story takes a while to truly kick off. However, the sheer density of the world, the horror elements, and the distinct first-person magical combat make it an essential and memorable experience. If you're looking for a game with unmatched style and atmosphere, grab Ghostwire and lose yourself in its spectral Tokyo. Piranha Bytes games have always been niche, but ELEX 2 truly flopped commercially, which is a massive shame because it offers a level of player freedom and old-school RPG depth that has been abandoned by most mainstream titles. It's a chaotic, post-apocalyptic blend of sci-fi and fantasy, where you can wear power armor and wield a laser rifle 1 minute, and then use a magical greatsword and cast elemental spells the next. The perfect aspect of ELEX 2 is its refusal to hold your hand. The massive open world is immediately accessible, and enemies don't scale to your level. You will encounter creatures that will one-shot you, forcing you to respect the world, explore intelligently, and constantly improve. This high-risk exploration and genuine sense of danger give your progression real weight. Joining one of the 5 distinct factions completely changes the story and your available skills, ensuring huge replayability. The commercial flop can be tied directly to its traditional European RPG flaws, janky animations, slightly clunky combat controls, and a very rough introduction. But if you can look past the budget veneer, you find a deep, rewarding, and truly free-form RPG experience that delivers hundreds of hours of content. It's a deeply flawed but perfectly executed vision for those of us who miss the brutal honesty and complexity of classic PC RPGs. Released too close to the Mad Max Fury Road movie, and often dismissed as just another open-world game, the sheer quality of Avalanche Studios' 2015 effort means it deserves a spot on this list. Mad Max delivers an absolutely brutal, beautiful, and compelling sandbox in the Australian wasteland. The game is perfect because it executes 2 core mechanics flawlessly: car combat and brutal melee fighting. The vehicle-based gameplay is unparalleled. Your car, the magnum opus, is a true extension of Max, and constantly upgrading its armor, engine, and weapons is the main progression hook. The high-speed chases and explosive vehicular combat feel fast, dangerous, and incredibly satisfying. Coupled with that, the Arkham-style hand-to-hand combat is visceral and crunching, making every scavenge for gas and scrap feel earned. Where it falters slightly is the repetitive nature of its open-world objectives, but the atmosphere and core loop overcome these issues. The sense of isolation is palpable, and the struggle for survival against the desert and its insane inhabitants is brilliantly realized. Mad Max is a deeply underrated game that captures the essence of the franchise perfectly. If you want a brutal, focused, and mechanically excellent open-world action game, this is an absolute steal today. Enslaved: Odyssey to the West is the definition of a beautiful disaster, a game with a core concept and emotional weight that far outstripped its commercial appeal. Based loosely on the classic Chinese tale Journey to the West, this game transports you to a post-apocalyptic, overgrown America, delivering stunning environments where nature has completely reclaimed skyscraper ruins. It's perfect because it focuses entirely on the powerful, evolving relationship between the strong, solitary monkey and the tech-savvy, pragmatic Trip. The biggest stumbling block for players at the time was the linear structure and the focus on traversal over deep combat. The traversal itself is fluid, cinematic, and always designed to push the narrative forward. The combat, while simple, is punchy and satisfying, focusing on crowd control and strategic use of tripped stun attacks. This isn't a complex RPG, it's an interactive road trip with heart, beautifully written dialogue, and some of the best motion-captured performances of that generation. It's a crying shame this game flopped because it's a masterclass in focused, character-driven adventure. It respects its narrative arc and never pads its runtime with unnecessary filler. Enslaved is a visually distinctive and emotionally resonant experience that proves games don't need sprawling skill trees to be profound. If you want a concise, beautiful, and heartfelt adventure, this is an essential piece of forgotten history. If you thought you knew what a military third-person shooter was, then you clearly haven't played Spec Ops: The Line, a game that used the drab, sandblasted aesthetic of its contemporaries to completely subvert the genre. Commercially, it was ignored. Creatively, it's a masterpiece. Set in a sandstorm-ravaged Dubai, the game perfectly baits the player into thinking they are the hero, only to slowly reveal a horrifying narrative about the cost of war and moral decay. The core gameplay is standard, serviceable third-person shooting, which is exactly why the narrative works so well. It tricks you with familiarity before forcing you to confront genuinely uncomfortable moral choices that have tangible, visible consequences on the environment and the characters. The game doesn't just tell you war is hell, it makes you feel complicit, dragging you through a descent into madness unlike any other game of its type. Its perfection lies in its unflinching narrative bravery, which is precisely why it struggled to sell to an audience expecting a straightforward popcorn military flick. Spec Ops: The Line is one of the most important, and depressingly, one of the most undersold commentaries on violence and heroism in the medium. It's essential for anyone who appreciates thoughtful, challenging storytelling that sticks with you long after the credits roll. If the definition of a perfect game is one that is mechanically flawless and relentlessly fast, then Vanquish should have been a massive hit. Directed by Shinji Mikami of Resident Evil fame and developed by Platinum Games, this is a third-person shooter that operates at impossible speeds, delivering a caffeine-fueled ballet of rockets, slides, and robot violence. It failed commercially because it was weird, short, and blisteringly demanding of the player. The genius here is the ARS suit and the boost slide. You can rocket slide across the battlefield at breakneck speeds, shifting into slow motion at any time to precisely target enemies while repositioning. This mechanic transforms every encounter from a simple firefight into a complex, high-speed tactical decision. You're not just shooting, you're performing a highly stylized, futuristic dance of death. While the story is typical sci-fi cheese, the sheer visceral thrill of the gameplay overcomes any narrative weakness. The boss fights are massive, multi-stage spectacles that demand mastery of the boost and bullet time systems. Vanquish is pure, unadulterated adrenaline, a beautiful, tight package of mechanical perfection that deserves its resurrection on current platforms. If you want a game that makes you feel unbelievably cool, look no further. Sleeping Dogs is the definitive proof that an open-world copycat can utterly surpass the games it seeks to emulate, yet it remains one of the most criminally underappreciated games of its era. Set in a stunningly realized, rain-slicked Hong Kong, this game delivers a compelling narrative about undercover cop Wei Shen, balancing his loyalty between the police force and the triads. The atmosphere is thick, and the narrative stakes are genuinely high. The combat is where Sleeping Dogs achieves perfection. It blends Arkham-style counter and combo melee combat with brutal environmental kills, shoving enemies into air conditioning units, phone booths, or fish tanks. This, combined with the incredibly satisfying slow-motion gunplay and high-speed car chases, creates an action cocktail that is far more refined than many of its open-world competitors. It feels distinctly Hong Kong action cinema, not just another sandbox. The commercial struggle was likely due to a messy development history and a slightly late release window. But today, the game holds up beautifully, offering a vibrant world, excellent combat, and a focused story full of betrayal and intense choices. If you want an open-world experience with fantastic martial arts combat and one of the best renditions of a real city in gaming, Sleeping Dogs is an essential addition to your library. Tango Gameworks' sequel to the divisive first game was a massive critical improvement, offering tighter controls, a better story, and a semi-open world structure, but it was completely outsold by its more hyped competitors. The Evil Within 2 is a masterclass in psychological and survival horror, trading the cheap jump scares for sustained, oppressive dread and genuine emotional stakes as Sebastian Castellanos hunts for his daughter in the terrifying world of Union. The gameplay is perfect because it balances the brutality of combat with the scarcity of resources. You are constantly forced to make decisions. Do I engage this frightening creature, or do I use my stealth skills to sneak past and conserve that precious shotgun shell? The transition from claustrophobic interiors to the larger, semi-open streets of Union works brilliantly, giving you freedom to explore while ensuring the horror never lets up. Its biggest commercial hurdle was simply the shadow of the first game's mixed reception and a crowded horror market. This sequel is a refined, emotionally resonant, and genuinely terrifying experience that delivers a satisfying loop of resource management, exploration, and intense confrontations. If you want modern survival horror with a deep story and unsettling atmosphere, ignore the sales figures. The Evil Within 2 is a triumphant, perfect nightmare. Control is a game that won critical accolades and countless awards, but commercially struggled to find the massive audience it deserved, likely due to its unique, sometimes esoteric narrative and complex design. Remedy Entertainment delivered a genuine masterpiece of action and atmosphere, set entirely within the shifting, brutalist architecture of the Federal Bureau of Control (FBC). The game is perfect because it executes a sense of style, setting, and satisfying combat like few others. The core perfection lies in Jesse Faden's powers, telekinetic throwing, levitation, and a brutal, satisfying melee dash. Once you unlock these abilities, the combat transforms into a kinetic, destructive frenzy where the environment is both your weapon and your defense. You're not just shooting, you're ripping concrete slabs from the floor and hurling them at enemies. The game brilliantly blends the paranormal and the mundane, creating a uniquely unsettling X-Files meets David Lynch vibe. The commercial challenge was likely that the lore is dense, confusing, and requires genuine effort to piece together through collectible documents. But for those of us who appreciate deep, well-written world-building and physics-defying action, Control is essential. It's a game that respects its own weirdness and gives you god-tier powers in the most architecturally bizarre setting ever conceived. If you want a visually spectacular and mechanically deep experience, ignore the sales figures. Let's be honest, Mirror's Edge Catalyst was set up for failure. It attempted to take the beloved, tight, linear, free-running perfection of the original and force it into an open-world structure, which many felt diluted the formula. But if you judge Catalyst on its own merits today, it is a mechanically perfect movement simulator that delivers a true sense of flow and speed that no other game can match. The first-person parkour is utterly flawless. The flawless part of the game is the sheer, unadulterated joy of traversal. Once you start chaining together slides, wall runs, and pipe swings without breaking stride, the game enters a meditative state of pure speed. The runner vision, guiding you with red highlights, perfectly trains your eye to seek out the next jump. The combat, which focuses on kinetic pushes and environmental takedowns rather than gunplay, complements the speed beautifully. The flaw, and why it flopped, was that the open world felt sparsely populated, and the mission structure occasionally forced you into frustrating, closed-off combat encounters. But for the player who can ignore the map icons and focus solely on getting from point A to point B as fast and as cleanly as possible, Catalyst is a stunning, unique, and essential parkour experience. It's a perfect flop that finally delivers on the feeling of being Faith. Alpha Protocol is the definition of a diamond in the rough, a completely flawed, technically janky mess of an RPG that somehow managed to be a narrative masterpiece. Obsidian Entertainment delivered a spy thriller RPG that was panned for its mediocre combat and clunky stealth, but failed commercially despite offering the most genuine and impactful player choice system in modern gaming history. Its perfection lies in its reactivity. Every dialogue choice, every failed mission, and every target you choose to spare or eliminate completely changes the plot, the characters, and your available missions. If you anger someone in the first hour, they might be an enemy boss in the last act, or they might abandon you entirely. This high-stakes, branching narrative gives the game massive replay value, rewarding players who truly role-play their secret agent. The reason it was a flop: the technical execution was rough, the gunplay was often frustrating, and the stealth was unreliable. But if you can look past the budget limitations and embrace the deep, branching dialogue trees, you will find an unforgettable, complex spy saga that genuinely respects your decisions. Alpha Protocol is a perfect example of narrative ambition overcoming technical imperfection, and it's a required play for any RPG enthusiast. The Saboteur is one of those incredibly stylish late-gen PS3/Xbox 360 open-world games that got completely overlooked, largely due to its publisher's internal turmoil. Set in Nazi-occupied Paris during World War II, the game is immediately striking because of its incredible visual mechanic. Areas under heavy Nazi control are rendered in stark black and white, while areas you liberate burst into vibrant, glorious color. This aesthetic choice is why the game is perfect. It's not just a visual gimmick, it's a brilliant thematic reinforcement. As the Irish protagonist Sean Devlin, your acts of sabotage and rebellion literally restore color and life to the city, making every small mission feel significant. The gameplay is a fun mix of stealth, third-person shooting, and climbing rooftops to set explosives, a highly kinetic and satisfying loop. The commercial failure can be blamed on poor marketing and its dated, slightly clunky open-world design compared to its contemporaries. However, the unique atmosphere, the jazz-heavy soundtrack, and the compelling story of a cynical drunkard becoming a city's hero make this game utterly essential. If you want a WWA game with genuine style and a liberating feel, The Saboteur is a beautifully realized, criminally underrated gem. Let's end this list with one of the most powerful launch titles of the PS3 era, a game that was tragically sunk by a short runtime and a limited hardware install base. Heavenly Sword is a focused, beautiful action-adventure from the developers who would later create Enslaved and DMC. It's perfect because of the fluid, responsive combat system and the truly brilliant, emotional performance by Andy Serkis as the villain King Bohan. The core combat is centered around the legendary Heavenly Sword, which offers 3 distinct fighting stances: speed, range, and power, allowing protagonist Naruko to fluidly switch styles mid-combo. This variety kept the action fast, brutal, and strategically satisfying. The game is less of an epic and more of a focused cinematic experience, delivering a tight narrative with no filler and incredible early-generation motion capture that holds up surprisingly well. Its biggest flaw, and the reason it flopped, was simply the length. It was short, and players expected 40 hours for their money. But for those who appreciate high-quality, focused, and mechanically excellent action, Heavenly Sword is a rare example of a game that is all killer and no filler. It's a perfect, tragic piece of PS3 history that deserves a look if you want a concise, visceral, and beautiful action game. So there you have it, 20 games that the sales charts tried to forget, but which stand as undeniable masterpieces of quality and innovation. If your takeaway from this list is that sales figures are a terrible judge of artistic merit, then my job is done. Your console is now free from the mediocrity of hype, ready to explore genuine excellence and truly unique experiences. Which of these essential flops are you downloading first? And which other commercially challenged gems should we highlight next time? Go install something brilliant, hit that like button, subscribe for more underrated gems, and don't let the noise define your passion. There's a perfect game waiting for you, you just have to look away from the bestseller list.